Today we talk to a friend of mine about her wraparound holistic approach to creating powerful shifts in families. Hi, it's Sheryl Sitz, welcoming you to another episode of Exploring Possibilities, available on my website at journeyofpossibilities.com, as well as Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube/Sheryl Sitz. And we'll talk with Rosemary Slade after this. I've got to tell you about Mario Rosales. He is the force behind this podcast, getting it started. Heck, I didn't even know what a podcast was. He's taught me how to create and publish these, as well as host a website, be on YouTube. He's a great IT person, all things technology, and he speaks English with it, which makes it nice. Be sure and reach out to him at mariorosales.com. Now for our guest. Rosemary Slade assists individuals, families, and children to actualize changes and achieve the outcomes they desire. She's really amazing in her holistic approach, pulling together cold laser treatments, nutritional balancing, life skill development, and the ever important aspect of reframing our thoughts and language to be more empowering. All of this comes together to create connection and empowerment in these families with children we tend to call special needs. You'll find her online at betterlivingwithrosemary.com, and I'm so glad she's here with me today. Hi, Rosemary.
Hi, Sheryl. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.
I love any excuse to hang out with you.
Right back at you.
Aw. We've had a fun journey together these past few years, haven't we?
We have had, in my opinion, a wild roller coaster ride that's been full of fun and a lot of learning and a lot of awareness building and frivolity and a lot of fun also thrown in there. So I feel like it's been a great journey with you.
I agree. I'm having a lot of fun. And I've really been impressed to watch the way your work has transformed. You've been working with these children that society likes to give labels, autism, ADD, ADHD, all kinds of labels as special needs. And you and I both know how gifted these children really are. And when I met you, you were really in a scientific approach to helping them. And now it seems like you've rounded out still a very solid science foundation, but with a lot of extra stuff added on. How would you describe it?
I love that description. Right now, what I am doing with my families is my best to incorporate how the awareness is with the whole family dynamic of what's happening within the family, and letting the family know that it's not all about the label, the special needs, that perhaps the journey is the destination is the journey, and perhaps that the person that has come into their life that has the special needs is actually there to help them grow in their journey. And so they help each other in the long run, that they both are much more in the long run, much more than the sum of their two parts, the whole of the family. I see over and over and over again, if it hadn't been for that particular child in the family, they wouldn't have learned what it was that they had learned to the depth that they really had been learning it. So for me, helping the family become aware that actually the little person that's there may just indeed be the little flower, the little gift that they are wanting to change so much, but perhaps that's not really what needs to be done.
Well, I really admire these families and empathize with them, because I see a child trying to fit into a society that isn't designed for those gifts. And I see a family trying to learn to communicate with that child and feeling like they speak different languages. And at the end of the day, I see a bunch of frustrated individuals because none of that is working for them. And that's probably the point that they reach out for somebody like you to hopefully bring help. Where do we start? We're frustrated. The kid's not working in school. We're not fitting into society. Now, bringing all of these different holistic modalities, how do you start to create that initial shift in the family where they can start to breathe together and grow together?
One of the ways that I actually start is to start with where they're at. And oftentimes, as you really rightfully said, there's a lot of anger, or there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of expectations that family members, teachers, doctors, medical professionals, therapists, all that, they place their judgment on these families and I'll say the primary caregiver, which usually is the mom. I don't want to disregard the dad as well, but they're there typically doing the majority of the work. So they're under a lot of judgment and under a lot of other people's judgments. Mm-hmm. And what I've been learning recently in the awareness and the language that we use is that if I can help the parent, the primary caregiver, realize where these judgments and where these feelings are coming from, and are they really the parent's judgments, and are they really the parent's feelings, then that opens up the door for the child to have a better relationship, which is it's a very subtle change. The medical model usually looks at what is wrong with the child. Mm-hmm. That is the focus. We're trained to look at what the deficits are and rarely look at what the pluses are. And also in the school system, if you have a child that's a little bit different, that learns differently, and especially if perhaps a boy, when they always learn differently neurologically, you're trying to put a round peg into a square hole, or a square peg into a round hole, if you will, in the educational system. And oftentimes there's not a really good mix, and drugs are often prescribed to calm the child down so that they can accept the learning that is happening. So it's a double-edged sword. Your question that you've asked, I think, opening up and helping the parent really understand where all of these judgments are coming from, and working through and working through the judgments and the statements, the awareness statements that, I'm not okay. My kid's not okay. It's just not okay.
Absolutely. I've been around these families because I'm blessed to have so many practitioners around me like you that work with these families. And I see how gifted these children are. And yet that really is the initial energy that I pick up from many of these families that aren't yet working with practitioners or are new in this realm, is they've been told everything that's wrong with them. And so talk about low self-esteem all the way around. And self-esteem, we know, is so vital to any kind of growth. So even just starting to see what we're doing well, which in my book, some days is just getting out of bed and trying it again another day.
I totally agree. The message that the child hears from the beginning is that they're not enough. They're never enough. They'll never be enough. And to have that repeated over and over and over again sends a very strong message to the person that they aren't enough. And when in reality, they really are enough, and they do have something to provide to the family and to society. It may not be what we think it is in our judgment, that we need to have them be a rocket scientist or something like that. Perhaps we need a little bit more love in our life and a little bit more love in our world. Some of these children come here, I believe, with that actually encoded in them, is to bring in more love.
They are so loving. And yet they're met with judgment. And despite all the judgment they're met with, when I meet these children, they are pure love. And I know how I feel towards someone when they judge me. It isn't pure love. I'm working on that. But so that amazes me. And then the way that we have come to cope with it, because what we don't understand socially, we tend to manage poorly until we come to understand it better. And our answer for this has been medication. And so we are medicating more children than not in our school system. And this is my little platform here, because we don't want to change the school system, which is obviously not serving the needs the way it is designed of the majority of the population any longer. So I think these more and more of these quote unquote special needs classes are coming up. And that's great, because maybe that's the foundation for a future different style of learning that is more experiential and less rote memorization and testing. But so where do you see the biggest impact in all of the work that you do? Because you work with the foods that they eat, you work with the exercises and activities that they do to build motor coordination. You work with the thought processes and the language. Where's the best entry point? Is it through their thought processes, as you mentioned, what's right, what they're doing well, or is it the nutrition? Where do you go next?
One thing that's clear to me in my 23 years now of being an occupational therapist, when I first started, I was so intrigued with autism. And at the time it was 1 in 3,000. And now it's 1 in, I believe it's 38 or 58. It depends on where you're at. So in 20 years, we've gone from 1 in 3,000 to, and I'll use a 1 in 58. Clearly there's something going on, and it's not better diagnosing of the condition. What I've noticed just in general is our food supply has degraded very substantially, and a lot of children are not they're receiving very little proper nutrition anymore. They're fed from formulas which are not compatible to the body. They're eating a lot of sugar. They're eating a lot of grains and simple carbohydrates, very few vegetables, very few nutritious foods. With that being said, and understanding the science behind how our human bodies work, if you have malnutrition, you're going to see symptoms that are classified as ADD, ADHD, Asperger's syndrome, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder. All of those things that get the label are actually, in my opinion, a manifestation of a situation where the body is malnourished in some way. I do like to start with a clear understanding about nutrition with the family, because typically these children that I'm introduced to eat only 2 foods, maybe 3 foods, and that's their food groups. And it's typically a cereal, a milk, and chicken nuggets from McDonald's or something from a fast food joint. And that is their food. That is their nutrition. They will refuse to eat anything else. So once the nutrition piece is addressed, and that is a big component of a person's life, is to get good nutrition in, whether you're an adult or a small child. Just to get some decent nutrition in is a challenge. And anyway, so that's the first thing to really address. And we take baby steps doing that. I've not yet met a child who really is enjoying their milk and their cereals and their chicken nuggets, jump right into vegetables and that sort of thing. It typically takes a bit of work and dedication to make that switch. But once it happens, there becomes a subtle change in the child. Oftentimes the behavior improves. Oftentimes the mental abilities of the child start improving all by themselves. So to me, the foundation and the cornerstone of anything that anybody would do that they have complete control over, they don't have to call a therapist in. They can just get online and find the information out. I do nutritional balancing. It's certainly not the only thing. I strongly believe in nutritional balancing, but it's not the only way to get nutrition in a child. As long as you're eating a decent diet, which is heavy in vegetables, cooked vegetables, some nice proteins, minimal grains, and some good fats, you're really good to go. And you should be seeing some nice changes in your child just with that alone.
And in mom and dad. And I mean, I'm going through the sugar thing myself, trying to finally wean some of the sugars off. And if we only dealt with the sugar, we would have a radically different society. The processed sugars, not the natural sugars, the fake ones. I see a huge shift in my tolerance, in my ability to focus, in how I feel, foggy brain, all of that stuff. The mood swings. So I think it's also not just the kid eating that way, but the mom eating that way. Then you probably got a better ability for the two to have the patience to connect more easily.
I have to say amen to that. Most people are in a state where we're running around hypoglycemic and waiting for our next sugar hit. Mm-hmm. And that could be from a grain or it could be from sugar. But most people are really, don't even have the capacity now to maintain a steady, calm demeanor or steady state because the body is just deranged and seeking out and completely deranged and looking for sugar. So we have children that are running and cycling through hypoglycemic states, and it's not being recognized.
Or it's being treated as ADHD. Oh, they're so hyper, we got to medicate them now. And really, if we get rid of the sugar, have you worked with families that could either greatly reduce or eliminate medications based on nutrition?
Absolutely.
I'm sure.
Absolutely. Even adults that are on medication, the same applies. It's adults and children, us in general, that are really challenged right now with all of the toxins that we have. We have toxins in our water, toxins in our air, toxins in our food. You turn around, there are toxins everywhere. Our bodies, well before the Industrial Revolution happened, were very capable of detoxing these heavy metals and toxins and things like that. We were very capable of doing a detoxing and getting rid of those. But since about 1997, I can actually pinpoint a year, things have really changed, especially with the addition of there's up to 5,000 chemicals that are allowed in our food supply. So with all of the chemicals that our bodies are being assaulted with, how could it be that we would be able to even communicate well or think well or sleep well or do any of those things if our body is not receiving the nutrition it needs and then unable to detox the heavy metals that are there anyway? So that is a really big component. And with the families, I either get the glazed eyes, I don't want to do that. Or I get I'm on board, let's do it. I'll work with a family where they don't want to work with the nutrition piece. However, the path to really getting some nice abilities in your child, in my opinion, is diminished because you're working with somebody who doesn't have the nutrition on board in order to be a good learner.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm guided to ask you about the keto diet because that's the latest big craze and, we'll just eliminate all the carbs and we'll be healthy. Are you seeing that being successful? Are you working with anybody where that's actually helpful?
Interestingly enough, the keto diet has been very popular in the special needs community for 20 years or more. And that has been popular with children who have got seizures or epilepsy, uncontrollable seizures. And the keto diet that those children are on is very, very, very strict. It's very high fat and maybe 5 grams of carbohydrate, which would be vegetables. And 5 grams, if you pull out a nickel, that's how much 5 grams is. So the rest of it is fat. It's fat, fat, fat. It works for some children. The keto diet that's out now is slightly different. They're adding vegetables in. They're adding in some other things. In my opinion, it's not a diet that is a long-term solution. I believe that the fats that they're offering on the keto diet, you can have any kind of fat. There's no consideration given to the quality of the meats, the quality of the fat, or the quality of the food, as long as it's fat. And I think this is just me and my thoughts, and also what Dr. Wilson also says is for the short term, it's great. It will help stabilize the blood sugar because you've naturally eliminated all the sugars. So it does help with that. It does help with weight loss. However, consuming that many fats over the long term, and I'm talking years and years and years and years, can be pretty detrimental for the person's health anyway. So I'm of two minds. If somebody wants to do it, I always say, well, just contact me when you're done, do it for a while, and then let's get on nutritional balancing where you can balance out your diet and go and use this diet for the long haul. So it does have its benefits. I have seen it be very, very positive for certain children who have intractable seizures that only the other options would be doing brain surgery and disconnecting the two hemispheres, or physically removing physically removing a hemisphere of the brain. So these are the options left. And the keto diet does work for a certain percentage of that population.
That's great. And then I tend to agree with you insofar as we tend to like to adopt things that are very extreme measures that will see fast results. Just culturally, we have a history of that. And just like when, carbs are great and fats are bad. So we were eating all carbs until that blew up for us and our body said no more. So I think it's important that we are able to do something for the long term that's going to get all the nutrients we need in our bodies. I don't want to run out of time to talk about the cold laser therapy that you do, because I've even seen this prolong my cat's life. I mean, I've experienced it personally, but my dear cat Loki, who transitioned last fall, he got some extra life out of doing the CBD oils for his arthritis and you sitting down with those lasers. And he got to where he was so excited to see Aunt Rosemary coming. And that was my opportunity to see its effect on something other than myself. So how do you use these lasers that you work with to help these children develop their hand-eye coordination, their motor skill coordination to be more functional?
That's a great question. I use this laser. It's called the technique is called quantum reflex integration. And the laser is called a harmonic laser. It was developed by Bonnie Brandis. And she developed that because she had a son who had special needs. Always out of special needs comes the beauty of a system that is designed to help integrate 17 primitive reflexes. Primitive reflexes, we are born, all human beings are born with primitive reflexes, and those reflexes are what helps us grow. We have reflexes that help us root to a bottle, and reflexes that help our eyes work and our hands work and everything work. When a child is born, perhaps by C-section, they miss out on 3 very important reflexes that affect and directly impact their ability to sit and attend in school. When a child or a person has had a major operation, or if a child is in the hospital for a long time, or if a child has just not developing well and having challenges, a late crawler, a late talker, very wiggly, all of those things are indications that their reflex system, that there's some challenges within that primitive reflex system. And so the reflex system, think of it as your foundation. It is our foundation. These reflexes are active when we're young infants, up to about 2 years. There's some that integrate at about 6 months and some that integrate at about 2 years. And what they do is they help us move through life. So by using the laser with a protocol for these 17 reflexes, if you have a child who's struggling, it helps reconnect those connections, make them more robust, and children who aren't walking have a better chance of actually achieving that goal with using primitive reflex integration. There's been a lot of successes with parents using this. I've had successes with many of the children that I've worked with. Also animals. Your dear sweet Loki, he loved the laser. The laser just really feels good also in addition. So lasers donate energies to the cell. Reflex protocols use the meridians, acupuncture meridians, uses those, and in a pattern for each of those reflexes. So it's basically re-educating and reteaching the central nervous system. In addition, that laser has Rife frequencies. So it's giving light and sound to the central nervous system. What we combine after that would be movement patterns and those sorts of things. So it's very complementary with any other thing like physical therapy or occupational therapy or speech therapy. It's very complementary with any of those other therapies.
It primes the body to better receive and move through what you do in therapy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Primes the body and it helps connect those connections. Really, just think of it as a faulty connection, and it helps make that connection much more robust. So that child gets a better chance of actually building that foundation. I get a lot of parents who say, I just want my child to talk and walk and talk. Walking and talking are the product of having very integrated reflexes. If you have a child who's struggling with walking and talking and doing some of those things, and you're working on those through traditional therapies, you might eventually achieve your goal. However, you're working on the top end. You're not working on on getting the information to the primitive brain where it really needs that information to go, building those connections so that when that child is actually able to walk, it happens from a brain spontaneously from a brain connection. It's not taught or rote therapy-wise kind of taught. So it's a very big distinction.
And you are also actively helping parents learn how to do more on their own to work with their children as well. You've been doing lots of different kinds of trainings with parents toward those kinds of ends as well, right? So if a parent can't get to you physically here in the Gulf Coast of Texas, they're able to bring you to them if you're available, or maybe you can connect through technology and give them some resources that they can start to do some work. So this work can be done at a distance as well, correct? Some of it?
Correct. I do laser coaching. I actually just completed a week-long intensive. I was in Nashville working with a family one-on-one, and I also work with people all over the world via Skype to help them. They have the laser, typically. They have access to the online courses through Bonnie Brandis's, it's reflex integration. They just need a little bit of an extra assistance, and that's where I come in. And so I've worked with people from all over the world briefly in these sessions to help them understand how to use the laser with their particular child in their particular circumstances, because not all children are going to lay there and just be really calm. And that's my goal, is to have the parent be successful in what they're doing with the laser.
What I love about the way that you work is all of these different components are natural. You are really about the more natural we can be, the more we can get away from some of the chemicals, away from some of the sugars, away from some of the labels that can be as toxic as the foods we're eating. The more we can get away from all of this and get back to what's naturally available to all of us, the healthier we can be and the healthier we can connect. Even in the life coaching that you do around, that we've trained in together around the thought patterns and how those shape the way we see the world, and the language that we use and the shame and the blame that can create, and how we can learn to catch that. So I think your greatest gift is the teachings that you can give to people on how they can do more of this stuff on their own, so that it's all not dependent upon you. It's teaching us how to take all these naturally available resources, all the way down to the essential oil work that you do. I've met a lot of essential oil salespeople and people who use it in their life, and they're authentic in their own way. Rosemary's been doing it since way before it was hip and trendy, making your own medicines, and you really walk the talk when it comes to natural living. Do you work with the families much with the essential oils? Do those come into play in this as well?
I do use essential oils with my families. It depends on the family and depends on the situation. I oftentimes see a lot of families who are using essential oils already, and I do my best to explain and teach the family that more is not necessarily better. It feels like, and I used to be there, if I needed a teaspoon of something, I would take a tablespoon, because surely if I took more, I would feel that much better. And to help people understand that essential oils are not, they're extremely powerful, and using them as they are supposed to be used in lower quantities, even for children, even in lower quantities, a lot of these children are so sensitive that we're overwhelming their system with not only with essential oils. So yes, I actually, the more work I'm doing, because they're so used and ubiquitous now, is more of education on how to please back off the intense use that people are using them. And sometimes I get the eye roll, and sometimes I get the understanding that, yeah, there's possibility that it might be a little much. Some of the things I've come to an extreme awareness about, since you and I have been focusing a lot on awareness recently. We do a lot of awareness stuff, and I've been coming to these awarenesses that it feels like everybody is really like wired. Nobody's having and I'm making a generalization. People are having a real hard time calming down and relaxing. And if they find that, a vitamin's going to do the trick for them, say it's magnesium. Well, I'll take 18,000 jillion billion hits of magnesium. That'll calm me down. And then I'm going to race to the next thing, and do the next thing I got to do, and do the next event, and do the next. And I've got to take my kid to the next thing and the next thing. And their kids I have children that I work with who they have much more of a dance card filled up every week than I could possibly think of. They go from school all day to after school activities, to activities. And I'm seeing that people are having a real challenge even understanding just how wired everybody is. And to slow down just a little bit and be with themselves is a huge challenge. Just to do that, to be 5 minutes with themselves, has been a place to just start.
Yes.
So I think the hallelujah and my big awareness is I compiled that with a child who has special needs. Then if you have 3 children and they're all roughly within 5 years of each other, you've got children who are doing after school things. You've got a child who's got special needs, who's going to their therapy obligations. You've got your stuff going on. You've got your other children's things going on, and perhaps your spouse's things going on. Everybody is really busy. And there's a real reason why people can't sleep, because they're so wired.
Well, and then they're taking coffee to keep up and sugar to keep up, and then more stuff to come down. And it's really a mess. And you talk to the mom, and I've met some of these moms, and I'm like, where are you in your schedule? Where is your restoration time? Where do your kids restore themselves? Well, they're anxious. They need to be busy all the time. That structure is really good for them. And I'll have to wait, I guess, until they're older for my time. And that's just not sustainable, and it's not healthy.
Yes.
And I understand. I don't mean to come across judgmental. I get it. It's just at some point, maybe we all need to take a collective deep breath and try another way.
And speaking of deep breath, that is actually what I have started doing with my parents, my moms and caregivers, is really focusing on deep breath and belly breathing.
Yes.
If one could do one thing that they have with them all day long in their body, it's their lungs, they can totally do deep breathing. That is a good way to ramp down a little bit and calm down. A lot of families have got children who are very anxious, girls, especially tweens and preteens, their anxiety levels are off the charts. I can say for sure that, yes, perhaps they may need a pill. I'm not a medical doctor. What I do notice with these children is that there's a lot of stressors on their lives. The other thing is they're not breathing. So everybody is shallow breathing. And one thing that I know is if you don't have enough oxygen into your cells, it makes one cranky and kind of anxious. So that to me is an inexpensive fix. You can do it anytime. Of course, if you have a child who's anxious a lot, you have to help them realize that they actually can do that and be successful with it. So I work a lot. I have learned that as I work on less is more and helping people understand that as they're taking things away, you're actually healing yourself. And that has been my journey as I moved out to the country, and I've released a whole bunch of things, and I keep releasing all of the foods I needed. When I went to Nutritional Balancing, it was so much easier because I have what I need to eat. I don't have to make it up. I don't have to go to the store and buy tons of ingredients. I know what it is I eat. I eat vegetables and meat, certain vegetables and certain meats and certain grains. It's freed my life up in so many ways that I can open it up for doing better things instead of spending all my time cooking. And I know I'm getting great nutrition at the same time. And I know that because I can get up. I have energy throughout all my day. I'm not particularly cranky. I won't say 100% of the time, but that's part of being a human being. But I do have good energy all throughout the day, and it's a steady energy. And I think that that's one thing that people really want, is they want steady energy. They want to feel good. They want to be able to not have a 3 o'clock lag or jag or whatever happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like you're describing, I mean, the power of silence. I too moved out of the city and out of the chaos, and I'm going through a particularly challenging time in my family right now with a sick family member. And it's one more reminder sometimes I forget. Of course, we all forget, no matter how much we focus on awareness, we get caught up in life, and I'll become reactive again, and then I'll realize it. And the minute I realize it, I know it's time for 5 really deep breaths, and it shifts everything. It moves my emotions. It opens my clarity. It brings my presence forward. It shifts everything. So God love you, moms, for what you're trying to learn to navigate with your families. Please breathe. Turn the radio off. Turn everything off and just enjoy the silence.
For 2 minutes, and then work it up to 5. That would be, if I had 5 words to tell any mom, it would really be breathing is the big thing.
I agree. Yes, breathing. That can be your parting thought, I guess. Or did you have something else you wanted to toss out there?
Well, I'm not quite sure if I have any other parting thoughts. Actually, I do. I wanted to share that in my journey as being an occupational therapist and working with families, I continue to grow. I get my very best teachers are the moms, the families, the children that I work with. I learn so much from observing what's going on. And the most interesting thing is, as I walk the walk of awareness, as I walk the walk of people really understanding, getting to a point where I can truly understand where that person is. And even if I really don't understand them and I maybe have some judgment about them, in the long run, it's not about my judgment. It's about what's going to work with that family. What's going to work inside your family. I don't live with you. It's what works with you. So I use my bag of tricks, if you will. I use the things that I know, all of my life skills, all of my life learning, and the therapy things that I've learned to see if I can help you guys, and I mean you guys as in a family, come together and be that family that you guys said I do to. When you got married and you said you wanted the family and you had the white picket fence or whatever it was that you had, and now it's different. It's not yet what you had expected. My goal is to help you as the family unit become the family that you want to be in the journey that is your journey and nobody else's. And that is the thing. Working out of judgment, working out of those things and understanding when people are judging you, being able to have the awareness to understand that people are judging you, then you can make those choices, whether you choose to go with that judgment or be on your own.
Perfect. And that's something we can all grow and benefit from, because who hasn't felt judged? And my healing journey has been deciding that I'm not those judgments. I'm something else. And I think that's healing for all of us. And that's one of the many ways that these children are helping us grow. So I love the way you work with the families, Rosemary. I love you as a person. Contact Rosemary just for the joy of knowing Rosemary. It is a joy. Her website is Better Living with Rosemary. Thank you for coming and joining me today.
Well, thank you, Sheryl. I truly enjoy these chats that we have, and I hope that we can do it again, because the one that I had the last time is really different from this. I have really grown a lot.
Me too.
Yes. Thank you, Sheryl.
Thank you. And thank you, listener, for joining us. I'd love to hear what you thought. Share your feedback to info@journeyofpossibilities.com. And if you find value in these shows, we really work off of your generous donations. So please show us some love at journeyofpossibilities.com/support. We'll see you next week on Exploring Possibilities.